Hello and welcome back to Beckler Guitars and Repair. And today we're looking at a little bit of an underdog. This is a 2006 BC Rich Warlock Bronze Series made in Korea. Let's take a look. The first thing we're going to do is repair this headstock because it's kind of the first thing we need to do. So when I picked up this guitar, it was in the back of a car in the trunk, and it was about 33 degrees Celsius outside that day, so probably a lot hotter in the trunk. And I picked this guitar up for a good price, but we noticed when we picked it up that the headstock is cracked. So he said it hadn't been like that the day before, so due to the extreme heat in the trunk, the wood actually split. So the crack actually runs all the way down from the top of the headstock down into the neck. So you can see it from the other side as well. So I'm going to take all the tension off this neck. I'm going to remove some of these machine heads, and then I'm going to pry open the crack, inject some glue, and then clamp it up. And then once that repair is finished, because this repair needs to be fixed right away because it's actually could get worse and split the whole way through if we don't address it right away. So that's what I'm going to do, and then we can go over the specs and what this guitar is here. So I removed all of the hardware, the nut, the truss cover, took the strings off, and this is kind of what it looks like at the moment. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flex open this crack and take special care not to break the whole thing apart, and inject glue inside the crack as far down as I can go, and then I'm going to clamp it for 24 hours, and then we can have a revisit this. Alright, here's what the final clamping looks like. Doesn't have to be pretty as long as it works. And I'm getting nice even squeeze out everywhere, so I know all the cracks are closing nicely. And I tried to clean up as much as I could in terms of like a messy squeeze out that was happening along the way. So hopefully it's not a huge task to clean up afterwards. But now I'm going to let this sit for about 24 hours, let everything set nicely, and then we can see how it looks and then do a little bit of cleaning up afterwards. All right, so it's been 24 hours, so I just took it out of the clamps. Let's just get a focus there. Yeah, so you can see it closed up quite nicely. I removed some of the excess glue already. So it's you're definitely still going to be able to see it, but it's quite secure. I gave it a really good reefing on, and there's no opening at all. So I think this is going to be a nice, stable, secure fix. In the front, I couldn't really show it as I was clamping because when you're working with glue, you got about 10 minutes to get everything in place before it sets. But basically, this big piece here was loose. It actually came totally out like a chip. So I had to glue this back into place. But again, it sealed up quite nicely. There was some chip out with some paint. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to color match it and just drop fill it with some finish. So it's just a little bit more invisible. With black finishes, you can pretty much use anything to color match, like even a Sharpie, because it's just black. I do have other products for like staining and other color matching products, but black is easy. So I'm probably just going to Sharpie this, put some finish over top so it's sealed, and then we can go ahead with the rest of the guitar. Alright, so I just did a quick color match and drop fill. And yeah, it's not supposed to be perfect, but it just it's a little less visible, and it's nice and structurally sound now. So okay, let's go ahead and review the rest of the guitar. Alright, so yeah, I picked this guitar up locally for a very good price. It was already listed for a very good price, but once we noticed the headstock, I got it for, you know, really, really cheap because it did need some work. But these guitars, you know, when they first came out, they were kind of pretty much universally hated by classic guitar players. Nobody liked the pointiness, and they thought it was stupid looking. But these guitars, for a lot of people, were their like first guitars. And, you know, to a young person, this thing probably looked really, really cool. And they weren't a lot of money. And they seem to be just everywhere, in pawn shops everywhere and guitar stores. So a lot of people own these. And now that they're getting a little bit older, you know, it's been 20, 30 years since they came out, I think there's a lot of nostalgia for these guitars. And I think people are kind of looking to get them again, which is unfortunate because they no longer make these guitars. So the used ones are kind of going up in value, so that's why I thought it'd be a good idea to pick this one up, maybe fix it up, and maybe have an easy flip. But these guitars, I've played quite a few of them over the years. I used to work in a music store, and they used to come in all the time. And the quality would, you know, vary pretty wildly. Some of them would be terrible playing and horribly set up. I think that might have to do with, you know, beginner guitar players owning them and not knowing how to set up their guitars. But they were cheaper, and I don't think a lot of time was spent into the initial setup. But if you got one of these set up properly, you know, they usually sounded pretty good. The pickups I remember not being too bad. The bridge is actually pretty cool because it's fully intonatable, and it's a wrap tail piece. So usually you get the wrap tail pieces that are like a lightning bar, and they have like intonation etched into them with like saddles. But this one has like, it's kind of a mixture between a two-pneumatic bridge and a wrap tail. So you can actually intonate the individual saddles, which is cool. And the pickups, they're humbuckers. I'm not sure what kind of wood this body's going to be. I looked it up, and it could be mahogany, maple, or basswood. I'm not sure what the Bronze Series was in this year, so hopefully we can get a better idea once we take the neck off or look inside. We can see what kind of wood it's made of. I'm going to remove this sticker. It's got a three-way pickup selector. It's missing a knob. I think I have an extra one somewhere. One volume, one tone. It's got a pretty nice rosewood fingerboard with acrylic dot inlays. The frets on this guitar don't look too bad. They're not really worn. And it's got a black, it looks like a plastic nut. And this one, even though it's a Warlock, it doesn't have that spider headstock, or widow headstock rather. Here's another one I've been working on. This one's an old one I've had in my collection for a long time. Just never got around to fixing it. I figured if I'm going to fix this BC Rich up, I might take a crack at this one too. This one's in a lot worse shape, but that's for another video. But a lot of the Warlocks had this headstock too. It's called the Widow headstock, but this one does not. It's just got kind of the sharper Explorer kind of style headstock, I would say. And yeah, these are bolt-on guitars. So we'll have a look. We'll take the neck off and see if we can see what the inside wood and the body looks like. But the neck pocket looks okay. Looks like it's a nice fitting neck. And aside from the headstock crack, there's not a lot of damage on this guitar. Not too many scratches or dings. There's our pickup cavity, or sorry, our control cavity there. And it's got a mounted on the side output jack. And usually you see lots of big dings and stuff on these pointy guitars around the points because people hit them on stuff and then they crack and break. There's one there. But overall, this guitar is in pretty good shape. And I thought it'd be just a fun video idea to put one of these back together and set it up just perfectly and give it the best chance it can for playability, and we can really see how one of these things sounds once it's properly set up and intonated and all that. This is a 2006 BC Rich Bronze Series Warlock. So let's go ahead and get on the bench and get some specs. Alright, so one of the things I like to do with these guitars is not do any work on them. I just kind of pick them up and then bring them home and then kind of go through everything together on the video. But so I never plug this thing in, and I'm not getting any readings from the pickups or anything. So there is a problem with the electronics on this guitar. So I'm going to have to open it up and take a look, see what the issue might be. But first, let's take off this sticker. This is nice. This is a high quality sticker that comes off easily, not one of those little paper stickers that's going to leave a whole bunch of stickers still on there and a lot of residue. So that came off nice and clean. And the cavity cover still has the protective plastic on it. Alright, so looking in the cavity, I can see a couple obvious things. We've got a ground wire that's off. We've also got one of the pickups. It looks like there's a ground wire off on one of the pickups. It also looks like someone's been in here soldering stuff. So likely they had a problem with the electronics and tried to fix it themselves and were not successful. You can also see some burns of the soldering iron on this cable there. So I'm going to check the output jack. So that's another thing that could be wrong aside from these other things. Our output jack looks okay. It's soldered correctly, so the problem is with the other wiring here. So I'm just going to quickly go over this wiring, resolder the obvious problems, and then test it. And if we need to, we can go further from there. Alright, so I reattached those loose wires and just touched up a couple solder points and plugged it in, and it seems to work. Got our volume, this tone, and our front pickup too. So yeah, luckily it was just an easy fix. And just a quick look at the electronics before we put it back together. So yeah, it looks pretty cheap. They're using little mini pots with the brown capacitors you see on these like cheaper offshore models. It's got like an offshore switch and just a basic output jack. The cavity itself looks like it's covered in shielding paint. It looks well routed, and the cavity cover has got shielding tape on it. So yeah, pretty basic. So it's reading now. Unfortunately, I only had a white switch tip, so that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb on this one. But for now, it'll be fine. So in the bridge position, it's reading a 17.74, so it's likely a pretty hot like ceramic style pickup. And then in the neck position, a 16.75, and in the middle, an 8.79. Alright, let's have a look at the pickups. So let's start with our bridge pickup. So yeah, it looks pretty much like those standard cheap offshore pickups. They usually have the gold back with the ROHS sticker, and then this one just says R for rear. And our route looks pretty clean. There's no jagged edges or anything, and it looks like it's finished too, so it looks like this is routed before it's finished, which is not the same as like a Gibson. And the neck pickup is more of the same. This one just has an F for front instead of R for rear. And yeah, the neck pocket or the neck pickup cavity is not, or is covered as well, finished over, but the routes look nice and clean. And here's a closer look at the bridge. It's unbranded, but it seems like it's pretty good quality. It feels like it's substantial. It's pretty heavy. And so you've got these screws at the back to help with intonation, so you can move the screw backwards or forwards depending on where you need to intonate. And each of the individual saddles are intonatable as well, much like a tunematic bridge. So it's kind of a neat little design. So here's a look at the neck pocket. It's nice and clean. It seems to be well routed, and the wood appears to be maple. So this is a maple finished neck and a maple body, and the neck looks pretty nice. It looks well made. The edges of the fingerboard are nice and rounded, and the frets themselves look to be well seated and nice and rounded on the edges. There's no fret sprout at all, and I really like the pattern of the rosewood. It looks nice. You can see our scarf join up here. So it's not a one-piece neck, they have a scarf join. But other than that, looks good. Let's just check the neck fit here. There's no shims in the pocket, so that's good. Even, you know, some higher end fenders ship with shims from the factory. So yeah, it's not crazy tight, but it does like snap into place, and there's not a lot of room for wiggling. So I would say that's a pretty nice fitting neck. So on bolt-on guitars, I like to do my fret work when the neck is off. It just makes it a little bit easier to work with. So I checked this with a fret rocker. There was no high spots at all. There was no wear on the frets either. So this guitar has kind of barely been played. They were kind of rusty and oxidized though, so I ran them through the buffer, and now they're just super shiny. and I cleaned and oiled the fingerboard as well. So yeah, these look great and they should be very nice to bend and play on. Here's a look at the machine heads. So they look just to be kind of cheap little machine heads. Oh, they got some branding on the back. It says Korea. So yeah, these are little Korean machine heads, and they're actually labeled BC Rich. So yeah, I would assume that there's nothing on this guitar that says where it's made, but I would assume it's from Korea, because it does have a lot of Korean parts on there, and I do believe these were made in Korea at one point. And the build quality so far seems nice. I mean, it's got some cheaper materials, like the pots and the wiring are cheap, but those are Korean parts, and so is this. And the neck actually seems to be really nice. It's got a nice big thick piece of rosewood, and it's well rounded, and there's no fret sprout at all, so it's definitely got a nice neck on there. And I think the higher quality wood was made in the Korean factory, so the maple ones I think came out of there. If you know for sure, let me know in the comments, but yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and say this is a Korean made BC Rich. I'm gonna go ahead and put these machine heads back on the headstock. I had to take them off to fix the crack. Alright, so this guitar is weighing in at just about 7.5 pounds or 3.40 kilograms. Alright, now I'm ready to restring and set this thing up and set the intonation. So I had to take the nut down a little bit. The strings near the nut were sitting pretty high, so I had to use my luthier files to file those down, the nut slots a little bit, to get a really good setup, but everything else was set up very nicely. It was intonated properly already. I didn't have to touch much, and yeah, the action's quite nice and low. So if we check using our notch straight edge, that there is very little space between the straight edge and the fretboard, so that tells us the truss rod is set quite nice and tight. And then here in the 3rd fret area, now that I've done my filing, you can see that when you use the 3rd fret that the string's sitting just gently against that 1st fret. So we've got nice low action in this area. And then in the 12th fret, using our depth gauge, you can see at the 12th fret, it's measuring between a 1 and a 1.25, and between a 0.75 and a 1 on the high E. So yeah, nice low action. I don't think I've ever played one of these on a strap before, so let's just see how it sits. So yeah, it sits quite well. The neck does kind of want to come down a tiny little bit if you jostle it a lot, but for the most part, there's not much neck dive and it sits pretty comfortably on a strap. Sitting with it is actually pretty comfortable, so you can sit with it one of two ways. So the first way would be just like a normal guitar, where that you know, that indent is, it sits on your lap. But you can also switch it to your other leg and then kind of use the V portion as like a backup support there. So that gets you a little closer with your left hand to the end. So either way is pretty comfortable. So it's kind of a preference thing, but on this guitar you've kind of got 2 different ways to sit with it, which is cool. Alright, now I'm just going to run up and down the fingerboard to see if there's any buzzing or fretting out anywhere. I like to speed up this part, but if you want to hear it in real time, just slow down your player to 25%. So yeah, very nice low action and no buzzing or fretting out anywhere. And yeah, there's no fret sprout at all on this guitar. The edges are nicely rolled. And yeah, the fretwork on this guitar is actually really, really well done. It's nice and level, and it looks like the edges are done very nicely rounded. And now that it's been polished, it's very easy to bend. So yeah, that looks great. Doing some quick neck specs on the guitar. So at the nut, it's sitting at a 1.69 or a 42.94 millimeters. At the 12th fret, that is a 50.72 millimeters or a 1.99 inches. Neck depth at the first fret is a 0.81 or a 20.59 millimeters, and at the 12th fret that increases to a 21.46 millimeters or a 0.845 inches. And here's a look at our neck profile. So yeah, it's just a pretty standard C. It stays pretty rounded by the 12th fret. All right, let's plug in and see how this thing sounds. I'm going to start off with clean in each position, and then with a little bit of dirt, and then we'll try with a little bit of distortion. I was not prepared for it to sound that good clean. Yeah, it's really got the kind of that telly kind of twang in the bridge position, and then it gets a lot, you know, more mellow in the neck. but super clear, super articulate, and the notes ring out really nicely. These are very nice pickups, actually. They sound great. Okay, let's try with a little bit of overdrive and then some distortion. Alright, so what are my final thoughts on the 2006 Made in Korea BC Rich Bronze Series Warlock? I was really surprised by this guitar. I mean, everything on it, once it was all fixed up and kind of dialed in, sounded great, played great, everything was really, really nice. The build quality is there. It's got nice routes. It's made of maple body, maple neck, rosewood fingerboard, and the neck on it is really nice. Like it's a really well done neck. It feels very comfortable. It's kind of got that glossy satin finish on the back, so it's really comfortable to move on. It doesn't get sticky. And our frets, I polished them, but they didn't require any additional work, like no fret leveling or anything else like that. And it didn't look like it was ever played either. There was no fret wear. So that means from factory, the frets were really, really nice. There's no fret sprout or anything either. It's a nice weight for a guitar. It's just over 8 pounds, 8.5 pounds or so. And I was really surprised how comfortable it is to sit with. Because again, you've got two different options. You can go on this knee or this knee and be supported by kind of the V part in the back. That's something I didn't really realize about this body shape. I sat great on a strap, and the pickups, which I thought were going to be the weakest link on this guitar actually blew me away. They sounded great, clean. Even with a little bit of overdrive, you can play some of that, you know, classic rock country licks. In the bridge position, it sounds a little bit telly-y. Of course, you can dial that in with the tone knob. But yeah, it sounded great with like just a little bit of overdrive, and it sounded really good with distortion. It sounded really good clean. I couldn't actually believe how good this guitar sounded. So yeah, that kind of blew me away. I really like the bridge. Again, this is a really cool idea for a bridge. It's a wrap tail, but it's fully intonatable. You can move the whole business back and forth and adjust the individual saddles. And yeah, our neck repair worked out pretty well. It's pretty hard to see. If you get it right in the light, you can see those little crack lines there, but it was color matched and filled. Same with the back. You can definitely see it a little bit easier on the back. But again, it's structurally sound, and shouldn't have to worry about that anymore. The tuners seemed like they were really cheap, but they're made in Korea. So one thing I know about Korean parts is usually they're pretty good. And this guitar actually stayed in tune really well. The only issues I had with it was the nut. The nut was pretty poorly cut. Like the strings were pretty high in this portion of the fingerboard, so I had to take some of my files and file that down a little bit, but that's a pretty minor complaint. It's easy to do. It took me about 10 minutes. And the electronics are a little bit cheap. You've got the mini pots and the offshore, you know, 3-way switch, but at the end of the day, that doesn't really affect sound, or if it does, it's very minor. So the pickups were great. It played great, and it felt great to play too. So yeah, pretty blown away by this guitar. I know they made this guitar in several different locations, so maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe these Korean models are a little bit, you know, higher quality than some, because I've definitely played some BC Riches that I was not a fan of. But again, we did put some time into this with a nice setup and, you know, polishing the fretboard and just making sure it had the best chance to play as good as it could. And yeah, very surprised with it. I liked it a lot more than I was expecting. So yeah, if you're interested in this guitar, I'm going to have it for sale on the Reverb page. But other than that, thank you for tuning into Beckler Guitars and Repair, and I'll have more for you really soon. Thanks a lot.